Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Segar. Welcome to this webinar about senior projects. It's the ultimate senior project blueprint, perfect for those of you that are kind of dabbling with my senior project approach and need some more guidance, or for those of you looking for ideas. I'm really glad you were able to make it today. I would love for you in the comments to introduce yourself, tell me what you hope to gain from this webinar, what you hope to gain from this experience. So please introduce yourself in the comments and let us know why you're here and what you hope to get out of this experience. I have a lot to share, so this is going to be under an hour, I hope. We're going to shoot for that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started to just protect your time. So I'll share my screen. And here we are. So again, this is the webinar that you're in, the Ultimate Senior Project Blueprint, a comprehensive strategy for future-ready students. In this webinar, I'll share a future-ready senior project approach that builds student confidence, skills, and actionable plans for life after high school, bridging the gap between classroom learning and life beyond the walls of the classroom, life beyond high school. I want to encourage you before getting too much into this to stay with me until the end because I have a bonus opportunity for you. For those of you that came live to this experience, I promised a bonus and you will get it, and I'll explain more about that when we get to the question and answer piece of this webinar. So in the comments, I want you to tell me why you're here. So number one, you're looking for ideas, or number two, you're looking for a more concrete roadmap. So let's start with looking for ideas. You're currently in a phase of exploring ideas and seeking inspiration for a senior project or career exploration. There's no urgency, just taking your time to consider your options. Or number two, you're looking for a roadmap. Again, this is for those of you that might already have this idea that you want to do a senior project, or you might be familiar with my senior project approach and have the resources, and now you just need guidance. You're looking for help. That's you. So I want you to put in the comments whether you're a 1 or a 2. And I'm just really going to briefly tell you about my background in career and technical education and how I have this experience to be sharing with you right now. So I was at a project-based high school for 10 years. It had a very experiential skill building approach. Most of my students did the bulk of their learning experiences through project-based learning, so through PBL. High school experience is super personalized, so they take their aspirations, their goals, the credits they need, their interests, and they use their interpersonal awareness of themselves to design their own learning program, really. So it was an advisory-based experience where I had 20 to 25 students in my advisory at any given time. I would have them from ninth grade through their senior year. All of those seniors were required to do a senior project. All of the experiences that I've done with my students incorporate 21st century skill building. So through project-based learning, through senior project, through personalized learning, and so on. These 21st century skills are really baked into that experience. And we experimented as a school with senior projects for the 10 years that I was there. So we tried philosophy statements. We did a life plan. We did a big capstone year-long project-based learning experience. And all of those were wonderful. But what I found to be the most impactful, the most effective, the most future-focused experience was a combination of several different pieces of this puzzle that I'm going to spend this entire webinar talking about. And then I was a MAP Stars advisor and judge for 10 years. So what this program is an event. It's a big conference that high school students from all over Minnesota come to and compete in different career and skills events. So things like career portfolio, interviewing, resume building, service learning projects. So I was an advisor and judge for that for a significant amount of time. So you can see that my experience at this high school was very career and exploration and skill-based experience. So I want you to do a little exercise. It'll just take a second, where I want you to brainstorm one skill or experience you wish your graduating students could confidently showcase. So things like public speaking, resume building, project management. Maybe it's a specific skill such as adaptability or leadership or critical thinking or the ability to secure and keep a job. These are all things that I would love for my students to have before they graduate or on their way out. But I want to hear from you specifically one of the most important skills or experiences to you. And I want you to add that to the comments. All right, so let's just quickly talk about where this webinar is going, what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what a senior project is, the senior project components that I incorporate into the full comprehensive experience. I'm going to show you some real examples of senior project experiences that my own students have carried out. I'm going to talk about ways that you can organize this experience, so a timeline and a plan for execution. And then I'm going to give you some implementation tips. And finally, we'll do a question and answer session live. Okay, so let's get started with what is a senior project? What does that even mean? I wanted to look it up. I wanted to see how others describe a senior project or what they think that means. And I just Googled it. What is a senior project on Google? And there's that AI snippet at the top. And this is what it said. A senior project is a long-term academic undertaking for students in their final year of high school. It allows them to apply the knowledge and skills they've gained to a topic of their choice, often resulting in a presentation, research paper, or creation that showcases their understanding and critical thinking. So there's parts of this that I agree with. I agree that it marks the transition from high school to the next stage of life. I agree that it's a long-term experience that might take the course of an entire senior year for a student. I agree that students will apply previous knowledge and skills to this experience, and I agree that there should be choice in this matter. This is a very personal learning experience. As an experiential educator, there are some ways that I would expand and sort of modify this definition of a senior project. I personally believe throughout all of our experimentation of senior projects that those that are future focused, that really prepare students to be confident and ready for the next chapter of life, is what I want my senior project to promote. It's what I want to be accomplished. So what I would add to this is that it should be experiential and future focused. It builds on confidence, practical skills, and real world outcomes. I like that it would be more comprehensive. So rather than doing a capstone type project that encompasses everything they've already learned, I want my senior project to combine content development, skill building, and lifelong learning. So it's looked at as less of a comprehensive summative assessment of everything they've gained and built over the last 4 years, and more of preparing for the next step, which is the career exploration piece of this. It integrates self-discovery and career readiness, and the results, the end product of this grand experience is tangible. It's something that students can use. So what is a senior project according to me? A senior project is a student-led experiential learning experience that prepares high school seniors for life after graduation. It fosters self-exploration, career readiness, skill building, and community impact. Students design meaningful projects on topics aligned with their passions, solve real-world problems, and showcase their growth through public exhibitions and usable final products. So that's what the rest of this webinar is really going to be about, is how to put this definition into action. So the next step that we're going to talk about is the senior project components. My senior project approach includes 5 parts. So these are all the components. There's a personal learning plan, 21st century skills portfolio, career exploration project, career-related community action project, and a career portfolio. And I'm going to discuss each of these individually. So this first component, the personal learning plan. What is that? A personal learning plan is an evolving document that supports students through self-exploration, goal setting, action planning, and reflection during this senior project session or term. So it might be over the course of a senior seminar. It might be over the course of an independent study where one of your students is doing this project. It might be over the course of a semester or a quarter or a year, however you decide to do it. And I'm going to show you timeline options in a little bit. The first phase of using this PLP or this personal learning plan is the self-exploration phase. So the first thing students do is explore who they are, their values, their interests, their personal strengths, challenges that might pop up throughout this experience. This phase is designed to build self-awareness and provide clarity on their personal journey beyond just the project itself. So this is sort of a training ground for them to have self-awareness in their futures as well as throughout this project. So I have a personal learning plan template that I've created for my students so that they don't have to do that. And so this piece of it, the self-exploration part, is the first thing I have students do. They do an about me page where they really just put photos up of images that represent who they are, what their values are, what they're passionate about. Maybe they talk about their family, their hobbies, their pets. This is really just them showcasing who they are, who they believe they are, what's important to them. They do an interest survey, they do personality and career surveys. I like to have my students do this. Some teachers and educators don't like these types of surveys because they feel it puts their students in a box. So if your students do a career survey and it says you'd be really good at nursing, a lot of people think that that holds kids back by sort of giving them a label. That's not why I use these surveys. I like to use these surveys to give students this opportunity to really kind of reflect on these surveys and the results that they get. Do they agree with the results? Is this something that they're like, oh, okay, well, I really hadn't thought about nursing, but I think that's actually something I would really like. So you can choose to do these surveys or not. It's a personal choice and it's entirely up to you. And then I ask them to tell me what they want me to know about them and just sort of the things that they wonder, just to start sparking some ideas about what they'd like to learn more about. Phase two is goal setting and action planning. So in the personal learning plan, there's a section of this template that I use for my students that includes goal setting and then creating a personal learning plan for the session, for the senior seminar, for the senior project that helps them meet these goals. So here's an example. One of the goals in this example is to complete a detailed financial plan for post-graduation expenses, improve public speaking skills, improve time management. So I have them do senior year or senior project goals, post-secondary goals, career goals, and skill building goals. And then they create their personal learning plan around those goals. So this is how I have mine set up. I kind of give them these prompts and they answer these prompts. So which goals will you focus on this session and how will you meet those goals? Focus on 3 goals at a time. And so they just tell me how exactly they're going to meet that goals. How will your instructor partner with you to support you? How will you make yourself accountable? So it's really just a plan for the session. And then they can do a task list here and they will revisit this pretty regularly. So I like to have my students revisit their personal learning plans every week, every Monday. They come in, they check in, they review it, they make some modifications, but it's really just to be a reminder of the goals that they've set and how they're going to achieve those goals. And so by reviewing it every Monday or once a week, they're reminding themselves of those goals. They're checking themselves. They're seeing if they're making progress on those goals. And then they can modify their plans if they're not making any headway. And so I include in my personal learning plan template a review, just some prompts that help them know what to look for when they're reviewing their PLPs. And then The third phase of using a PLP or a personal learning plan is the reflection and outcome piece. So this happens at the very end of the senior project experience. So after completing their senior project, students reflect on their journey, assess their progress, and showcase the outcomes of their efforts. So you can see here that there's an end of the session reflection that I have in my template that just includes prompts for them to answer and session outcomes. So they can add things like goals, learning outcomes, and milestones. I like to include a teacher narrative where I summarize the experience that I've observed unfold over the course of the senior project. So here's an example of something that they might add to here, learning outcomes and milestones. The student did a financial spreadsheet, remember, for post-graduation, and they made a copy of that and put it here just as evidence of having completed this goal. Okay, so that's the personal learning plan. It's ongoing. It's really developed at the beginning of the session, reviewed throughout the session, and then revisited at the end of the session where all of their outcomes are documented. The next component of the senior project experience is the 21st Century Skills Portfolio. And this is a big deal for me personally. I am aware that the 21st century workplace requires more than simple content knowledge or a great GPA. It requires adaptability, leadership skills, problem-solving skills, creativity. This is what employers are looking for. So I like to have a 21st century skill building component to my project. So what my students do is identify essential 21st century skills that they want to develop. They build these skills, document their experiences, reflect on their growth over the term, and provide evidence of their progress in this portfolio. So I give my students a template to work with. It's a portfolio template that they can just plug and play. And this is an example. So a student decided they wanted to build time management skills. They planned an experience which was starting to use a digital planner. And in this case, this is their Trello board. And then they reflected on that. They reflected on the experience of managing their time with a digital planning tool. First phase of this experience of using the 21st century portfolio is skills identification. So students begin by identifying the 21st century skills they would like to improve, such as time management, communication, or problem solving. This phase of it, reviewing 21st century skills, assessing proficiency, and identifying areas for improvement, I have guiding slides in their template that they use. The next phase of this experience is your students organizing learning experiences or activities that will help them build the skills that they've identified as needing improvement. So they put their plan into action, for example, by using a new tool to manage their time more effectively. That example that I showed you. Here's another example. So in the template that they have, this is what their planner looks like. So this particular student would like to work on professional networking. They've decided that one way they could do that is to attend a professional conference. And then it asks for their experience goals. And their goals at this conference is to introduce themselves to 20 new people and then follow up with at least 2 of them. And then their evidence of skill building. So how they're going to show that they did this work is they're going to provide a photo of themselves at the conference, a contact log, and a screenshot of the follow-up emails that they sent. The third phase, after they've kind of done these experiences, is to reflect and document on those experiences. And they do that with a written reflection and some sort of piece of evidence. So, with the networking one, this would be a photo of themselves at this conference. This would say networking, and then they would reflect on that experience. What went well? What didn't go well? How did this experience help them build this skill? And so on. It really just helps them see or experience how important these skills are in life. The third component of the overall senior project experience is a career exploration project. And for me, my students take a project-based learning approach, and I think that's extremely important So, what is this experience? Students select a career of interest, research it, and connect with and interview community experts in the field. This project-based approach makes the experience real-world, meaningful, and experiential. So, what is project-based learning? I think it's important to distinguish between PBL, so project-based learning, and a project. A project would be something where they'd choose a career such as nursing. They're really interested in that. They want to learn more about it. They choose nursing. They do some research. They put a poster board together of the information they found and they share it with their classmates. They toss the poster board in the garbage and they move on with their lives. That is a project. Project-based learning is more real world. It incorporates community. Students collaborate and partner with community members. They have authentic learning experiences. So the big differences are that the final product that they create is a product that not only demonstrates learning, but provides value for a relevant audience. The authentic presentation is the delivery of that resource, that knowledge, those new skills to that relevant audience. And the community experts are those that can really partner with them or collaborate with them, or the students can use those experts as a resource in their project or in their PBL. So I will give you some more detailed examples of how that unfolds. So the first phase of this career exploration PBL is to engage in brainstorming activities to identify careers of interest, such as listening to guest speakers, completing career cluster surveys, conducting informal interviews, creating a vision board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have my students do most of these things. Here's an example of I did a career cluster survey, and this is what it came up with, and that was really interesting and not at all surprising for me. Your students might feel surprised by their results. Talk about it. I like to have my students create a vision board. This is one that I created for myself, and it was so inspiring and just lit such a fire underneath me. I've been in education forever, and I plan on staying in it, but I was so like into this activity that I looked more into what it would take to be a genetics counselor right now at this point in my life. So my point is that creating a vision board can be really inspiring and really help students develop these ideas for what they may or may not be interested in. The second phase, after they've identified some careers of interest, is to choose one of those and develop a PBL design around that interest. So students plan their PBL experience by selecting a career to explore, identifying an interviewee, deciding on a final product, and determining how to share findings with an authentic audience. So let's look at what that PBL design might look like if I wanted to do genetics counseling. I choose my career of interest. It's genetics counselor right now. I decide that my final product is going to be a guide on how to get into this career in genetics counseling. My community experts are interviews with genetics counselors. Authentic learning experiences could be that interview for sure. And then volunteering, they could review case studies, they can shadow a genetics counselor, they can create a family pedigree, and so on. So the hope is that in these project-based learning experiences, your students are sort of planning and coordinating these authentic learning experiences. And then the authentic presentation is this student has decided to publish a digital guide and share the link in Science Career Connect's February newsletter. So this will go out to anyone who's reading about science careers or who's interested in science careers. It will go out to their newsletter. Once they have their PBL designed, they execute it. They do the project. They do the work. They do the authentic learning experiences. They create their final product. They share it with a real audience that could really use their final product. So they research. And I would say with a PBL, with any sort of research, that they use a variety of different sources. They connect with their community experts. They plan to meet with them. They collaborate effectively. They experience authentic learnings. They identify, plan, and carry out these experiences. They develop their final products, get feedback, modify them, and finalize them. And they plan and secure permission to prepare or launch their authentic presentation. Phase 4, once they've completed this entire experience and they've done their authentic presentation and the project is wrapping up, They write a reflection on the experience, they self-assess, and if you wish, they can share their final product or the experience with the class, or with their interviewees or with other community experts that were involved. So I have my students reflect on the career PBL I just give them writing prompts, reflection prompts that they can answer. They self-assess using rubrics. And like I said, they can present to the class if they'd like, or if you'd like them to do that. The fourth component of the senior project experience is a career-related community action project. This project is kind of a service learning, project-based learning combination, and it's focused on that same career of interest. So students identify a community problem through research and inquiry, connect it to a potential career path, and develop a plan to take meaningful action. Phases or the process of this experience is to identify and research community issues, brainstorm solutions to that issue, to one issue, develop an action plan that students can take themselves, and then they take action. Let's go back to nursing. Let's say their career PBL was on nursing. They learned a ton about it. Now they're going to kind of tackle a community issue that is also related to nursing, not nursing careers. So they're not necessarily focusing this project on a nursing issue, like not enough time off or they don't get paid enough. It's not like that. It's a community issue that is related to public health or nursing. So let's talk about that. So an example of a community issue related to nursing or public health is preventative care disparities. So there's groups of people in the community that aren't getting preventative care or don't know to get preventative care. And so the student develops an action plan where they're going to host a health fair and advocacy day. So the students partner with clinics to host a health fair with free screenings, wellness workshops, and educational materials. And this action plan type is education and raising awareness. Another example is a student who's interested in welding as a career, as a potential career. And the related community issue is deteriorating community playgrounds. So their action plan is damage assessment and presentation. They're going to go from playground to playground, visiting these sites, documenting damage, researching the impact on safety and accessibility, and then develop this report of their findings and present it to the city to advocate for repairs. This action type is advocating for legislation or funding. So phase one of this project or this community action experience is to introduce community action projects and identify career-related issues. So students, I like to summarize what community action project is to kind of give an overview of it. I like to give examples to students because this is a really big project and it can be really exciting and really inspiring. It can also be really overwhelming. So I like to share examples of past student projects to really show students that you can do this. It's been done a lot of times, and this particular project might not have changed the world, but it changed something. It impacted something. These students gave back to their community in some way. And then have discussion about these projects or about possibilities for students to spark curiosity. During this phase, I also have students identify career-related issues. So they have their career of interest in place right now because of their career PBL. They're going to use that same career interest and really dive deeply into finding and identifying issues related to that career. So they might do current events. They might conduct kind of informal interviews with people in the community. They might review case studies. They might do a concept mapping experience where they really hone in on which issues are the most pressing. The second phase, once they have identified an issue that they want to focus on for this project, is to research that particular issue. So it's a deep dive into one issue identified in the exploration process. For example, let's say the career interest is teachers. The issue is a shortage of time and money for SEL in high school classrooms. Now they're going to go about really digging into that issue to find more details. They'll research the issue using a variety of resources. They'll connect with community experts. They'll develop a presentation and share it with the class. So that's this phase, this research phase. For example, here this student is studying decreased SEL in high school classrooms. They explain the problem. What is the problem? Lack of time and funding, that it's more of a priority for elementary students than it is for high school and middle school students. How has the problem evolved? They go on to say, or they researched and go on to say that that high school SEL was of focus during sort of the beginning parts of the COVID pandemic. And now it's starting to trail off because of a shortage of funding and time. And so the student would really like to try to make high school SEL curriculum more of a priority. So once they've really studied this issue in depth, then they explore solutions. So the next phase is to explore real, tangible solutions to the identified problem that students themselves can take on. So an example solution might be because teachers have a shortage of time and resources that maybe the students can develop SEL workshops and teach them themselves. That's one idea. So there's a variety of different example ideas. The student says that they can raise money by creating and selling SEL-inspired merchandise, then donate that money to an organization that continues to research SEL. They might donate time, like starting a club, group, or school-wide project where students plan and host SEL workshops. They might collect stories from teens in the school and compile them into a book or presentation to share them with the school board. So these are just ideas, and then the students choose one of them to move on with. So the next step is to develop an action plan, outline it, and kind of get started. So they define the purpose, they summarize the plan, develop goals and plans to achieve those goals, develop a documentation plan, and propose that plan. The next step is to take action. So they execute those action plans. They develop task lists, organize and plan, communicate with partners, create, etc. So here's an example of my students keep a task list. I have a check-in form that I like them to fill in every day. And that's it for that one. So then the final piece, and this is my favorite piece of this experience, is a career portfolio where your students really compile all of their experiences over the senior project experience. So skill building portfolios, work samples, service learning experiences, or volunteer work, which is largely baked into this community action project. And so what I do is I have a career portfolio template that my students fill in with all of this information. So the career portfolio highlights experiences, skills developed, work samples, all related to students' chosen career of interest, showcasing their growth and readiness for future opportunities. So let's say a student did their career PBL on wildlife ecology, they did a community action project on the same career, then they develop a career portfolio that really showcases their experiences with this particular career of interest. So it's a culmination of efforts. It showcases everything students have done, showcases their accomplishments. It provides evidence of career readiness for this particular career. It shows evidence of growth so they can see what they've accomplished over the course of this session. So the first thing they do is gather artifacts. They collect important documents to include in the portfolio. So these are some of the things they might collect. This is what my template looks like. I include a resume template, a career summary, career goals, philosophy statement, work samples, references. And then students build the portfolios with all of these artifacts that they've collected. They compile everything into a final polished version of the portfolio. So here are some examples. This wildlife ecologist. So there's this, the front page. This student's career of interest was a wildlife ecologist. In the work sample, they put their community action project experience in here, creating Be a Condor Guardian Tourist Pledge to raise awareness about human impact on California condors and promote responsible tourism. So they visited visitor centers, national parks, and they encouraged people to take this pledge for safe tourism around California condors. And people signed the pledge and they had stickers and they wore the pledge proudly on their shirts. And so she is giving evidence of this experience with wildlife ecology. And then she summarized her career summary in wildlife ecology. So this is really just her explaining how this career portfolio shows her skills and value as it relates to this particular career of interest, her career goals, her philosophy statement. So really her beliefs and values around this career. And so that's the career portfolio, which is really the end point of all of these experiences. And not only have this portfolio forever, but be able to share it either digitally or in print to whoever they would like to share it with in the future, such as, for their college application, they might put a link to this portfolio on their college application. If they're trying to get an internship or a job in that particular career, they can share that portfolio. So it's a really valuable tool to have upon graduation. Senior project examples. So I'm going to give you two examples of projects that my own students have done. One of which was the career of interest was counseling, and the other was entrepreneurship. The first example, the career of interest was counseling. This student, for their career exploration PBL, created a brochure about how to become a counselor, made copies of that brochure, and placed it in our school's career center. She did 3 interviews, all with counselors, and then attended a college fair where she researched the counseling programs at a variety of colleges. Then her community action project was a grief website, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. But in all of these experiences, she built an enormous number of skills, but the most focused were tech literacy, communication, writing and proofing, and problem solving. So her career portfolio highlight, in my opinion, was the community action project. This student lost her dad to cancer at 13 years old, and she wanted to create a resource for others who have lost a parent. And so she created this website called On My Own. She doesn't update this anymore, but if you want to get a closer look, the website is up there and you're absolutely welcome to go browse it. But she told her own story. She did a variety of interviews. I think there's something like 15 interviews in there where she interviewed those who have had parents who have passed and how they've gotten through it. She had a page on grief and depression, and then also provided resources and a forum for others to kind of talk and support each other. So this was a really cool experience and is an example of a community action project that didn't require a lot of resources. It didn't require a lot of leaving the classroom. It didn't require money. It just required her time and passion and dedication. Now, contrary to that was a student who did a project on entrepreneurship as their career interest. So their entire senior project was dedicated to business. Their career exploration PBL, instead of doing a brochure or a guide, he decided to create a business plan for a real business that he wanted to develop. And it was a skateboarding merchandise brand called Abstract Skate Company. He did interviews with other entrepreneurs and startups and shadowed a local tech startup in Minneapolis. His community action project was a free skate event for local teens. Again, the number of skills that were developed throughout the course of this experience far exceed what is written here on this page, but the big ones for this project were math, communication, technical writing, collaboration, creativity, planning, and resourcefulness. Okay, so let's go over exactly what this project entailed. The entire senior project is really summarized in this photo right here in this slide. So the student created skate decks and t-shirts with the Abstract Skate Company logo that he designed himself and created himself onto t-shirts and wanted to sell those. That was the extent of his company, of his Abstract Skateboard Company. But in order to do that, he needed to know how to screen print. So he needed to know how to get the logo onto the t-shirts. He needed to be able to have the resources to purchase boards and create boards and sell boards. He needed marketing advice. And so what this student did was really collaborate with local resources, so community resources. So he worked with a startup company, that same startup company in Minneapolis, this tech company that provided all of kind of the mentorship and finances to start this business. So they paid for all of the printing materials, the t-shirts, the skate decks, the launch party at the skateboard place. He connected with a local screen printer who made posters for marketing purposes in her basement. And the student and a couple other friends went and learned how to screen print from her and how to kind of makeshift his own screen printing shop for cheap. So he went back to our school and basically built a screen printing workshop in a closet that we never used and was able to create these t-shirts to sell with the help of the screen printer and with the help of the local startup company. And then he hosted this launch party where kids could come and skate for free. So for this particular project, I would say that the portfolio highlight is less of the community action project like the grief website was, and more about learning how to start his own business. So it's not just this idea of learning about other entrepreneurs. That was part of it, but he actually started his own company that he doesn't still run now, but now he knows how to do it. So that is a pretty special experience. So you might be thinking, well, about this career choice? If a student chooses nursing and decides throughout this experience that they don't want to be in nursing, that kind of stinks. However, the purpose of this project is not to make students feel stuck in one career choice. The bigger picture, or the real point, is that students learn how to explore careers effectively throughout this process. They learn how to learn. They learn how to be adaptable and transfer the skills that they've created or developed during this experience to life in the future. They've learned how to explore any career. So if they get into a career in their lives and kind of determine this isn't for me, they'll know how to research different career paths. They'll know how to find and connect with industry professionals. They'll know how to seek out experiential learning opportunities and build a strong resume and portfolio. They'll know how to take initiative in career preparation. And then the final result is a cumulative real world experience that they now can replicate anytime they feel like they are on a career exploration path. Next, let's talk about organizing the experience. How do you execute this? How do you plan it? How do you develop a timeline? I'm going to give you an example. Generally, this is kind of a senior project roadmap. So students build their personal learning plans first. That is the first step in this whole experience. Then they revisit their PLPs throughout the course of the session. They build their skills portfolio experiences over the course of the session. After they build their personal learning plan, they've set goals, they've created an action plan, then they can start their career exploration PBL, then they do their community action project, then they build their career portfolios. So I'm going to give you an example timeline. This calendar is over a 17-week period. So this is a semester where, let's say this teacher is working with their students. They have 3 hours of class time per week for 17 weeks. The first week I would spend introducing the senior project itself, giving examples of senior projects, going over the syllabus, that kind of thing. And then in the first week, I also have students do the self-exploration phase of the personal learning plan, where they're really learning about themselves, what their interests are, what their passions are, what their challenges are, what their goals are for the future. And then week 2, they build that personal learning plan. So they create an action plan, and then I host one-on-one meetings with each of these students, and we look over their plan, we make adjustments. This way I know exactly what their plans are for the remainder of the senior project. And then every week, I told you on Mondays that we revisit these PLPs. So my students go into their PLPs. On Mondays, they pull out that review guide to help them review their PLPs. Week 3, I introduced the 21st Century Skills Portfolio. They identify skills that they'd like to improve upon over the course of the session, and then they make plans to build those skills. And then every 2 weeks, I have my students put entries in. So they do their reflection and they add their evidence. I call this an entry. Week 4 through 6 is the career exploration PBL, and I start that first week by introducing the project, and then they kind of tap into what their career interests are and design their PBLs. We do all of that in that first week. And then weeks 5 and 6, your students execute these PBLs. The 6th week, I have my students do class presentations. You don't have to. I've found that it's helpful in order to help them build confidence with public speaking, because eventually they're going to end up doing their big presentation. And then weeks 17 through 13, we work on the community action project. This might feel really big, but there's a lot of tasks at hand in a project like this. And if you ever feel that your students are experiencing a lot of downtime, that they don't have something to work on specifically with their community action project at any given point, they can do a variety of other things, one of which is to do a 21st century skill building entry, to revisit their PLPs, to organize an authentic learning experience where they go out and maybe interview someone. The opportunities are endless. They can start working on their career portfolios and start asking for references, that kind of thing. So there are a variety of things that students can do if they, number one, don't require 6 weeks to complete their community action project. And two, if there's ever any downtime, like maybe they're waiting on a response from a partner and they have some time to spare, they can do any number of those other things. Week 8, I have my students do project issue research, that phase. Week 9, they do solution exploration. Week 10, they plan their action plan. And then weeks 11 through 13, they execute their community action projects. And then the weeks 14 and 15, they assemble their career portfolios. They gather all those artifacts and they really make polished, beautiful career portfolios that they can then bring with them beyond graduation. And then the last 2 weeks, it's really to just tie up loose ends and prepare for the presentation event. So I like to do a big senior project night where we invite parents and partners and collaborators and community members, other teachers. We like to invite the juniors, and even the juniors participate. And so this is a really cool event that I hope that you'll do. And we spend the last 2 weeks really preparing for that. So you might be thinking that's a lot of time. I don't have that much time, or maybe I don't have that much in class time. Maybe they're going to have to work on this stuff outside of class. That's fine. There are different ways that you can work with this if you're on a time crunch. So students design projects that are realistic within the timeline. So for example, if you only have 3 weeks for students to do community action projects, make sure that they design realistic action plans that can be completed in that amount of time. So creating a website versus a merchandise-driven business like the skateboard brand, that's an example of the website would be more realistic within that timeline. Or with the career PBL, creating a brochure is going to take less time than creating a business plan. So if you're on a time crunch, make sure your students are designing their projects and learning experiences that fit within that timeline. You can take an advisor approach. So I know that there's a lot of teachers who, have, let's say, a year-long senior seminar and they only meet with their students for an hour each week. In this case, students can do the heavy lifting outside of class. So they can do their interviews, they can do their research, they can do their community action projects outside of class time and use that hour of class time for check-ins, for one-on-one meetings, for feedback sessions with peers, catch-up work, that kind of stuff. Another option if you're on a time crunch is to condense the experience, which I don't advise. I should have put that in bold. Because if you're cutting out things like the community action project, because it's so lengthy, because it's so involved, they're not getting these authentic learning experiences to put into their career portfolio in the end. Now let's do some quick implementation tips, and then we'll get on to questions. So my first implementation tip is to get buy-in, particularly from students. So if your students are seeming like, oh, they're just not that into this, highlight how personal this experience is. And it's so relevant and it's so very important for this next step of their life. I would co-develop, display, and revisit norms. So developing expectations with your students for what this experience should look like. Have those norms on display and revisit them when they seem to be when those expectations aren't seemingly being met. Offer choice and autonomy. That really is the foundation of this experience. If you're choosing your student's career of interest, it's not really a career of interest. If you are choosing how your students, the solution for their community action project, there's going to be little investment in that. There's going to be little meaning. There's going to be little interest if it's not coming from the students themselves. And then celebrate progress. Another really important way to get buy-in is by connecting with parents. So communicate early and often. So I like to have an information session with parents. I send out an email just explaining what this is and how it's beneficial. I like to involve them. So I send out a parent log. It's like a spreadsheet, a parent participation spreadsheet, where they can offer their expertise, they can offer resources, they can volunteer to speak about their career, and so on. Also, share outcomes with parents. So, as your students are working through this experience, check in with parents and share what students are producing, share skills that they're building. You can create a website where you keep parents updated on senior projects. Another implementation strategy is to facilitate success by balancing guidance and independence. I like to provide clear guidelines, timelines, and milestones to set students up for success. I've sort of talked about the different templates and stuff that I have developed for students so that they don't get bogged down in all of those extra tasks, that it's there for them and they can focus on building these beautiful career portfolios. I think it's a nice idea to create a resource library for your students that would include things like articles, tutorials, links, contacts, community experts, including maybe that spreadsheet of parent involvement, parents that are interested in being involved in this experience. And then teach time management and project planning skills early. So make sure they're keeping a task list. If you want them to keep a calendar, I think that's a great idea. And then encourage reflection. Use journals or reflection prompts to help students evaluate their own progress and solve problems. I have a reflection prompt in every one of the components that my senior students tackle. So I think developing the habit of reflecting is a really amazing skill in itself. And then facilitate group discussions to share challenges and successes. A third strategy is assessment tools that assess not just the final products, not just the outcomes, not just content knowledge, but the process. Develop detailed rubrics that assess the product, the process, and 21st century skill building. And I like to have my students develop their own rubrics for very personalized learning experiences, such as the Community Action Project. Feedback is really important to keep kids on track, to help them find a balance of guidance and independence. So they keep track of their own stuff, but they check in with me regularly so that I can see and encourage and guide them into staying on track and making progress with this experience. Provide feedback during each stage of the project. I like my students to give each other feedback. Community partners can offer them feedback. And of course, I give feedback. I also Highly encourage doing a final presentation event. I've talked about this quite a bit, so I won't get too much into this, but include a presentation or public exhibition as part of the final assessment and use an audience feedback form to gather input from community members, parents, and peers. All right, the takeaway. We've finished. We are at the main point, which is to empower students to own their future. So the senior project is not to look back as a comprehensive assessment for their entire high school career. It's to empower students to go on to the next chapter of their life, having the knowledge and wherewithal to be successful in the 21st century. It's about teaching students how to take initiative and prepare for any career path they choose. It's equipping students with essential life skills. It's about learning how to take control of their own path and navigate their future independently. So you can absolutely implement all of these components without my resources. If you don't have it, you don't necessarily have to have it. It just provides all of the guiding materials that I've talked about in this webinar. So it has all of the templates, the senior PLP, it has the career portfolio template, it has the 21st century skill building portfolio template, the community action project guide, and the career PBL guide. You can certainly make all of these yourself. The whole idea is really just that it saves you time, and it's kind of a natural guide for you. It's a natural implementation guide, and it helps your students feel a lot more confident and less overwhelmed because it's all really laid out for them. So for each of the components that have a resource in this bundle, each resource includes an implementation guide for teachers and any of the templates or materials for students. The bundle also includes an editable syllabus, so you can go in and add deadlines, you can change the different phases. It includes a community action project example slideshow. So this is great for those of you that are just doing this now, are just beginning community action projects and have never done one. This is a great way for you to show students examples. There's a senior project task management spreadsheet. It's literally just a spreadsheet with a checklist that as your students work through each task or each phase of this bigger experience, that you can mark it off. You can see where your students are at all times. So it's really not expensive to begin with. It's only $27, but it just so happens that today is the TPT site-wide sale. So where I have this, where I sell this is in my TPT store, and the entire site is 20% off today. So today and tomorrow, you can get this full bundle, all of those things that I just said, all of those pieces for only $22. And here is my store link at the bottom here, but I'm going to put a link to this particular resource in the chat so you can just get right to it and not have to fiddle around with trying to find it. This from Andrea R. She was a senior teacher. She used this resource and said it's an excellent set of resources for teaching seniors either in person or in self-paced mode. This represents and saves countless hours of work and thought. So that last sentence is really what I like about this. And, this webinar was for free. I'm absolutely happy to teach you how to do a senior project because I think they're so very important. And this particular senior project has been such a good approach. But there are a lot of materials that could really save you a lot of time. And so that's what this resource is for. That's what this bundle is for. Also, for showing up live, you get this bonus, which includes things like the parent participation spreadsheet. There's a parent outreach email template that you can steal. There is a roadmap, a timeline, a feedback form for presentations. So there's a variety of things that I talked about in this webinar that are only in this bonus. And I will share this link with you in the replay email that I send to you tomorrow. Okay, so that's the entire webinar. I went over time a little bit. I'm sorry about that. There's just so much amazing information that I have to share, and I want you to walk away from this webinar feeling like you know exactly what to do now. And I hope that I accomplished that. So let's get into a Q&A.